Title: Cinderella's Real Life, Inspiration Revealed. For centuries, the tale of Cinderella, a young girl mistreated by her stepfamily, only to rise above her hardships and find love, has captivated the hearts of readers around the world. Yet, as rumors emerge that the legend was inspired by a real-life woman, an international race begins to uncover the truth behind the myth. In the cobblestone streets of modern Paris, historian Dr. Liana Duval sifted through stacks of ancient records. She was pursuing a lead that had captivated her for years, a historical figure whose life might just be the origin of the Cinderella legend. Her research pointed to a 17th century woman named Elise Laurent, an obscure noblewoman whose life held uncanny parallels to the fairy tale. Despite her efforts, however, Elise's story had largely been erased from history, her name fading into the dust of forgotten records. The breakthrough came on a quiet evening in the National Library. As Liana studied a collection of old manuscripts, she noticed a weathered, leather-bound journal tucked into the spine of a larger book. It was unlabeled, and her curiosity got the best of her. When she opened it, she found a title in faded ink: Memoirs d'A.L. Scanning the first pages, she gasped. This was the journal of Elise Laurent herself. The first few entries painted a picture of a young woman trapped in a cruel household. Elise had lost her parents early in life and had been taken in by an aunt who, rather than caring for her, treated her as a servant. Elise wrote of endless chores, harsh punishments, and a feeling of being invisible. But then, the journal took a turn. Elise described a night where, desperate to escape, she sneaked into a masquerade ball, hosted in honor of Prince Lucien, a noble whose kindness was renowned across France. Masked and unrecognizable, she danced, feeling free for the first time. Just as she was about to read further, the lights in the library flickered, casting eerie shadows over the rows of books. Liana brushed it off and returned to her discovery, only to be interrupted by the sound of soft footsteps approaching. She glanced up and saw a man in a dark suit watching her from the doorway. He was tall, with piercing blue eyes and an expression that made her uneasy. "Dr. Duval, I presume?" he asked smoothly. She nodded, her heart pounding. "My name is Charles Moreau, of the Royal Society. We have reason to believe you've come across something of significant historical value. We'd like you to cease your investigation." Liana narrowed her eyes, feeling a strange defiance rise within her. "I'm just doing my research. What could possibly be dangerous about a centuries-old story?" Charles stepped forward, his gaze intense. "Some stories have the power to shake empires, Dr. Duval. This one, in particular, touches on secrets that some would rather keep buried." As he left, he handed her a sleek black card with only a phone number printed on it. "Call me if you want to avoid trouble." His words had the opposite effect. Liana felt more determined than ever to uncover the truth. Over the next few days, she found herself in a whirlwind of late-night research and clandestine meetings with archivists who had insights into lost records. The story of Elise Laurent unfolded in fragments, her life playing out like a real-life fairy tale, filled with moments of despair and glimpses of love, all leading to a secret romance with Lucien, the young prince. Meanwhile, the Royal Society's warnings became less subtle. A dark car idled outside her apartment for hours. Her research notes went missing, and she noticed strangers following her through the city. Desperate, she decided to confront Charles, who seemed to know more than he let on. She called the number on his card, arranging to meet him in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of Paris. "Why are you so invested in Elise Laurent's story?" Liana demanded when he arrived. Charles glanced around, then leaned in. Elise was more than a forgotten noble. Her descendants still walk among us, and if this history were to resurface, it could undermine certain legacies. "So she was real," Liana pressed, "and I have proof." One dash, Charles's expression softened, an unexpected glimmer of admiration crossing his face. "Then you understand. Her life, like Cinderella's, was stolen by her family, by politics, and it's believed that her bloodline might still carry a claim to the throne." A tense silence fell between them, and Liana realized the full extent of what she'd stumbled upon. Elise Laurent wasn't just a forgotten woman. She might be the foundation of a centuries-old cover-up, an erased lineage with the potential to upend everything she'd known. Despite the risks, Liana continued her research, this time with Charles's reluctant support. He arranged for her to access restricted archives, where she uncovered letters, marriage records, and even a faded birth certificate for Elise's child. Through these records, she pieced together the tragic conclusion of Elise's life. After marrying Lucien in secret, they had a child together, but the scandal of their union led to their separation. Elise was sent away to a convent, her son erased from royal records. Through this journey, Liana and Charles grew closer. What began as a strained alliance evolved into something deeper as they shared stories, laughter, and long nights unraveling Elise's story. Soon, Liana felt torn between her mission to reveal the truth and her growing feelings for Charles, who, despite his role in the Royal Society, had come to care about her deeply. Finally, Liana made her decision. She published her findings, revealing Elise Laurent's true story to the world. The news exploded across media outlets, sparking debates about the role of history in hiding or revealing the truth. People were entranced by the real-life Cinderella story, and many wondered whether Elise's descendants still lived on, unaware of their royal blood. The Royal Society, furious with Liana's actions, made one last attempt to silence her. As she navigated a newfound public life filled with interviews and speaking events, she faced threats and attempts to discredit her work. But with Charles's support and protection, she remained undeterred. Together, they escaped Paris, finding refuge in a quiet village where the legend of Elise Laurent continued to grow. Free from the constraints of secrecy, they finally allowed their love to blossom. The world moved on, but the legend of Cinderella and the truth behind it remained, a timeless story of courage, love, and resilience. In the modern-day city of Paris, historian Dr. Liana Duval was close to a groundbreaking discovery. After years of research, she believed she'd found an overlooked historical figure whose life bore an uncanny resemblance to Cinderella's. Her research pointed to a 17th century woman, Elise Laurent, whose tragic life and ultimate rise to nobility were recorded in fragmented archives buried in the French National Library. But Dr. Duval wasn't the only one searching. Unknown to her, a shadowy organization known as the Royal Society, dedicated to preserving royal bloodlines and secrets, had also been searching for the story of Elise Laurent for years, and they would go to any lengths to make sure the truth stayed hidden. Liana had been fascinated by the story for years. Growing up, she'd always felt an odd sense of connection to Cinderella's tale. After discovering a hidden letter during her first research internship, she found herself captivated by the figure of Elise Laurent, a common girl with a mysterious past who, according to a handful of scattered records, had caught the eye of a prince, but was removed from history as if she'd never existed. She felt as though her own life had led her to this moment, to be the one to uncover Elise's story and share it with the world. She didn't realize just how dangerous that would be. One evening, as she pored over old manuscripts in the library, Liana noticed a small notebook tucked into the spine of a book that shouldn't have been there. Written in a delicate, faded hand, the first page bore the initials EL and was dated 1643. She held her breath, barely believing what she was seeing. Could this be the journal of Elise Laurent herself? Quickly, she packed it into her bag and left the library. Liana's breath caught as she scanned the first lines, which recounted the life of a young woman trapped in a household where she was treated as little more than a servant. Each word seemed to confirm what Liana had hoped. This might truly be the journal of Elise Laurent, the woman she believed was the inspiration for Cinderella. Her mind raced, trying to process what this could mean. The life of Elise Laurent, the elusive figure she'd been researching for years, had finally come into focus. Realizing the significance of her find, Liana glanced around. Though the library was quiet, she felt an unsettling sense of urgency, as if someone might appear at any moment to take it from her. She quickly packed the notebook into her bag, her heart hammering as she left the library and headed into the night. Back in the safety of her apartment, she carefully laid the journal on her desk. The pages, fragile with age, held entries that spanned Elise's life. The first few recounted her early years, stories of innocence and loss. But as she read on, she encountered Elise's writings about a cruel aunt who took her in, an encounter with a mysterious masked nobleman at a forbidden ball, and dreams of a life beyond the walls that held her captive. It was as if Elise's words were reaching through time, revealing her heartbreak and hope. Liana's world seemed to blur as she delved deeper. She felt she was no longer just reading Elise's story. She was living it. The reality of Elise's struggles, her secret love affair, and her efforts to escape her cruel life came alive on the page. By the time she reached the final entry, which hinted at a secret marriage to a noble and a child who would inherit nothing of his birthright, she felt Elise's pain and resilience resonate within her. But Liana wasn't the only one aware of the notebook's existence. Just as she finished reading, her phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "We know what you have, Dr. Duval. Hand it over, or you'll face consequences." Realizing she was now part of Elise's story, Liana vowed to protect her truth. She could hardly wait to open it. Back in her apartment, with only the dim glow of a reading lamp, she began to read the fragile pages. They told of a young woman who had lost her parents to a tragic accident and been taken in by an aunt who treated her as a servant. Elise wrote of cruel chores, long hours, and cold, silent meals. It was an unbearable life, until the night she met Lucien, a royal dupe, during a masquerade ball she attended in secret. Back in her apartment, with the dim glow of her reading lamp casting warm light across her desk, Liana could hardly contain her excitement as she opened the notebook. Her fingers trembled as she carefully turned the fragile pages, releasing a faint scent of aged paper that transported her back in time. The handwriting was elegant but shaky, as if each word had been written with a quiet urgency. She began to read. The entries painted a haunting picture of Elise Laurent's life. Elise described a tragic accident that had claimed her parents, leaving her alone and vulnerable, taken in by her only remaining family, an aunt whose kindness was overshadowed by cruelty. Elise's days were filled with relentless chores, her hands raw from scrubbing floors and her back sore from carrying heavy loads. Nights were no better, marked by silent, cold meals, where she was often ignored, treated more like a ghost than a relative. But then, the pages revealed a change, a night that sparked a turning point in Elise's life. It was a time of festival, a masquerade ball held at the royal court. For days, Elise had watched the preparations from the shadows, catching glimpses of shimmering gowns, flickering candlelight, and lively music drifting from the grand estate. Yearning to experience even a taste of this beauty, she'd seized an opportunity to attend, donning a simple mask and a gown borrowed from a kind maid who took pity on her. Liana's heart raced as she read Elise's words describing the night. Her excitement, her fear of being caught, her awe at the lavish decor and swirling colors. It was as if Liana were standing in that ballroom with her, watching the scene unfold. Amid the laughter and music, Elise's eyes had met those of Lucien, a young royal duke who was as mysterious as he was charismatic. She wrote of how his gaze lingered on her, drawn to something he couldn't quite place. They danced, neither speaking of their identities, but sharing an undeniable connection. For Elise, the encounter was nothing short of magical. Lucien's gentle words, his laughter, and the way he held her in his arms had awakened something long dormant within her. A hope, a glimpse of a world beyond the gray, shadowed walls of her aunt's home. Their connection, though brief, gave her a sense of belonging she had never known. But as Liana turned the page, her pulse quickened. Elise's words grew darker, revealing the consequences of her forbidden night. Her aunt had somehow found out, and the punishment was swift and severe. Yet even as she endured harsher treatment, Elise clung to the memory of that dance with Lucien. She wrote of sneaking glances of him at the royal gatherings and longing to see him again. Liana sat back, her mind racing. This wasn't just a story. It was Elise's life, her real struggles, her longing, and her secrets. The journal was more than just history. It was the heartbeat of a forgotten woman, and Liana knew she couldn't let it be erased. She was reading with trembling hands when a sharp knock sounded at her door. Startled, Liana froze, her heart pounding. She lived alone and didn't have visitors this late. She stood up and opened the door slightly. "Yes?" she asked, peering into the darkness. A tall, handsome man with piercing blue eyes and a slight smirk stepped forward. "Dr. Liana Duval?" he asked, his voice calm yet unsettling. "Yes?" she replied, wary. "My name is Charles Moreau. I'm with the Royal Society. We're aware of your recent research endeavors, particularly regarding the historical figure Elise Laurent. I'm here to advise you to cease your investigation immediately." "Or what?" Liana retorted, heart racing. The man tilted his head. "Let's just say that some mysteries are best left unsolved." He handed her a business card and then walked away, leaving Liana shaken. Unnerved but resolute, Liana continued her investigation in secret. Days turned into nights of intense research, following every clue, piecing together Elise's hidden life. Soon she uncovered more details about Lucien. He had loved Elise deeply and even planned to marry her. But Lucien's family was against their union, and Elise was mysteriously taken away from the palace. Her journal's last pages hinted that she had been captured to protect royal lineage. Unnerved by the danger, but resolute in her quest, Liana continued her investigation in secret, now acutely aware that Elise's story held greater weight than she had imagined. Days turned into sleepless nights as she pieced together the fragments of Elise's hidden life, her curiosity growing with each new detail. The small, dusty rooms of the archives and shadowed corners of libraries became her sanctuaries, where the only sound was the soft turning of pages and her own heartbeat echoing in the quiet. Her search soon yielded more insight into Lucien, the mysterious duke Elise had fallen in love with. Through marriage contracts, faded letters, and ball invitations scrawled with notes in the margins, Liana uncovered a heartbreaking truth. Lucien had loved Elise deeply. Against the conventions of his time and despite the protests of his powerful family, Lucien had planned to make Elise his bride. But their love had been deemed a threat. Lucien's family, bound by royal expectations and intent on securing a politically advantageous marriage, refused to allow their union. According to one cryptic letter, signed by Lucien himself, his parents had even devised a scheme to keep him away from Elise. The letter, fragile and almost illegible, expressed Lucien's rage and sorrow as he revealed that Elise had been taken, spirited away in the dead of night, her fate sealed by forces beyond her control. He'd written that her removal was not only to end their relationship, but also to protect a carefully guarded family secret. It seemed Elise's very existence threatened to expose a buried scandal or lineage that the royal family had kept hidden for centuries. As Liana scanned the last, anguished pages of Elise's journal, her heart broke for the woman who had been erased from history. Elise's words grew increasingly fearful and desperate. She wrote about being confined to a remote estate, her every movement watched by servants, loyal to Lucien's family, whose true purpose was to ensure she could never return to him. The entries hinted at a final attempt to escape and reunite with Lucien, but ended abruptly, as though she'd been cut off before her last words could be written. In her final entry, Elise alluded to the possibility that she was carrying Lucien's child, a child who, if born, could disrupt the royal lineage and inherit rights that Lucien's family wanted, kept secret. She hinted at plans to escape not just for herself, but for the life she carried, a part of Lucien and a symbol of their forbidden love. Liana sat back, the weight of Elise's tragedy pressing on her. She was now certain that Elise had been real, her life lost to the needs of a powerful family who had silenced her story. But despite the heartbreak, Liana felt a glimmer of hope. She could be the voice Elise never had, the one to bring her story to light. Driven by a renewed determination, Liana knew she had to tread carefully. The implications of her discovery were enormous, and she had no doubt that others would seek to stop her. But Elise's journal, the evidence she now held, was undeniable proof of a hidden legacy. For the first time in centuries, Elise's story would have the chance to be told, her voice echoing through history, no longer silenced. The more Liana uncovered, the more she realized just how closely her life was starting to resemble Elise's story. She even began seeing Charles more frequently, lurking in the shadows, as if keeping a close eye on her. Soon, he wasn't the only one watching. Liana found herself evading strangers who seemed to follow her on her commute. And at night, she'd hear footsteps in her building. This was no longer a simple historical study. It had become a battle for her own safety. One evening, as she walked home from the library, Charles appeared out of nowhere, blocking her path. "You're still pursuing this. I warned you. Why do you care so much? This is just history." Some stories have the power to change everything. Elise Laurent was no fairy tale. She was a real person, and her existence threatened certain royal secrets. The society I work for was founded to keep those secrets hidden. "And you think I'll let her story be erased again?" Liana whispered fiercely. A shadow passed over Charles's face. "You don't understand what you're risking." He moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Elise's story is tied to royal bloodlines and buried scandals. The truth could disrupt everything. Walk away while you can." But Charles's warning only solidified Liana's determination. She dove even deeper, losing sleep, eating little, becoming fully consumed by her research. She found records of Elise escaping from her captors and being aided by a mysterious group. Soon after, she married Lucien in secret and had a son, whose lineage was carefully erased from royal records. Liana couldn't help but wonder, could Elise's descendants still be alive today, living ordinary lives, unaware of their heritage? As she was about to unlock the final pieces of the mystery, her apartment was broken into. Papers were strewn across the floor, files ransacked, and her laptop was gone. She found herself in immediate danger with nowhere to turn, except Charles. She confronted him, demanding to know why they were going to such lengths to suppress her research. Liana's heart raced as she stepped into her apartment that evening, the faint scent of her coffee lingering in the air. She froze, her hand still on the door handle, as she saw the chaos inside. Her usually organized space had been torn apart. Papers were scattered across the floor like confetti, her research notes torn and shredded, her bookshelf in disarray. The most alarming discovery was that her laptop was missing, the device that held every piece of her research into Elise Laurent and Lucien. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She wasn't just dealing with passive resistance anymore. Whoever was behind this meant business. She felt the weight of danger creeping in, the magnitude of what she had uncovered making her a target. Someone, some powerful force, wanted her silenced, and they had just made their move. For a moment, panic gripped her, but she quickly regained her composure. There was only one person who had the means to stop this. One person who had been watching her closely, perhaps even orchestrating the events that led to her investigation. Charles. She didn't hesitate. Grabbing her coat and her bag, she rushed out of the apartment and made her way to the secluded cafe where she had met him before. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions. Why was he involved? What was his true role in the Royal Society? And most crucially, why were they going to such extreme lengths to suppress her research? Charles was sitting at their usual table when she arrived, the same cool, calculating expression on his face. His eyes flicked up as she approached, but there was no hint of surprise, only a subtle flicker of wariness. Liana could tell he had been expecting this moment. "Liana," he said smoothly, his voice low. "You've made quite a mess of things, haven't you?" She didn't sit. She didn't even acknowledge his greeting. Her anger surged, fueled by the violation she'd just discovered. I want answers, Charles. Why are you involved in this? Why is my research being sabotaged? What's so dangerous about the truth, about Elise Laurent's story? Charles leaned back, his fingers steepled in front of him as he observed her with an air of both pity and amusement. You don't understand, do you? This isn't just about one woman or one lost love story. Elise Laurent's life is tied to something far larger. The Royal Society exists to protect secrets. Secrets that, if exposed, would shake the very foundation of our history. Liana felt a knot form in her stomach. What secrets? Charles hesitated, then exhaled slowly, as though weighing his next words. Elise Laurent wasn't just a forgotten noblewoman. She was part of a lineage that goes back centuries, a bloodline that was meant to never see the light of day. If the truth were to come out, that Elise's child still exists, or even that her bloodline continues, it could change everything. A forgotten royal legacy that's been buried under lies. Some families would do anything to keep that hidden. Liana's breath caught. So you're saying Elise's son, her descendant, could still be alive? Charles's expression hardened. That's not the kind of information we can afford to let the world know. The political fallout would be immense. You have no idea what's at stake. Those who govern the world from the shadows would never let such a secret come to light. Elise was raised to protect the balance of power, and anyone who threatens to reveal that, well, they become a target. Liana's mind reeled as the pieces clicked into place. She thought back to the threats she had received, the messages warning her to stop, the break-in. It wasn't just about Elise. It was about power, control, and the legacy that could upend everything. You're telling me, Liana said, her voice low and steady, that the Royal Society, people like you, are willing to go this far to keep the truth hidden? That's why you've been following me, sabotaging my work, even threatening me. Charles didn't answer immediately, but the weight of his silence was all the confirmation she needed. His eyes, once filled with confidence, now revealed a flicker of something else. Regret, perhaps, or resignation. You're too close, Liana, he said softly. You don't know what you're messing with. There are people who will stop at nothing to maintain the status quo. Liana's heart pounded. She had reached a crossroads. There was no turning back now. Elise's story, the truth, was too important to let fade into oblivion. But now she had to make a choice. Expose everything, risk her own safety, and go head-to-head with the powerful forces that wanted to silence her, or walk away and let the shadows reclaim what was lost. Then I guess I have no choice, she said, her voice trembling with resolve. Charles's gaze darkened, and for the first time, Liana saw the man she had once trusted in a new light. He wasn't just a scholar. He was part of the machine that had worked for centuries to bury the truth. I can't let you do this, Liana, he said quietly. You're asking for more than just trouble. You're asking for war. Liana stood, her decision clear. She was no longer just a researcher. She was a protector of a story that could change the course of history. She had come too far to turn back now. Then let the war begin, she said, her eyes locking with his, as the weight of her decision settled into the pit of her stomach. With that, she turned and left the cafe, the door swinging behind her with a soft chime, marking the beginning of a battle she knew would change everything. Because, he admitted, Elise's bloodline is still alive. You may have royal blood running through your own veins, Liana. Stunned, Liana was speechless. The implications were overwhelming. If it were true, she could be a descendant of Elise Laurent herself. Charles led her to a hidden archive, where he showed her a blood-stained contract confirming Elise's forced marriage and the royal family's plot to erase her lineage. "It's not just a story, it's your story," he said softly, his demeanor shifting as he recognized the emotional weight of the discovery. Liana realized that she now had a choice: continue to expose the truth, risking her safety, or keep the secret and let Elise's story fade away forever. Just as she considered her options, Charles surprised her by offering an escape. He wanted her to have a choice that Elise never did. Their chemistry was undeniable. Days spent in hiding together turned into deep, intimate conversations, and soon, romance. They shared laughter and quiet moments amidst the tension of hiding from those who wanted the truth buried. Charles, despite his allegiance to the Royal Society, couldn't resist Liana's fire and determination. Finally, she made her choice. With Charles by her side, she published Elise Laurent's story, unmasking centuries of lies. The world was stunned, and soon, media outlets broadcast the tale of the real Cinderella. People everywhere clamored for more, with rumors swirling that Liana herself might be the heir. As Liana's life became a whirlwind, she found solace in Charles. Though they lived on the run, Liana knew she had something far more valuable than any inheritance: the love and respect of a man who had once been her adversary. But even as they vanished from public sight, whispers continued to circulate, and the legend of Cinderella took on a new form. Elise Laurent's story lived on, and Liana, her distant descendant, would forever be remembered as the one who set the truth free.
The Stories book is a captivating collection of tales that traverse diverse genres and emotions, spanning the realms of fantasy, science fiction, romance, and mystery. Each narrative is a journey into the unexpected, weaving intricate plots and compelling characters. With a skillful blend of vivid imagery and thought-provoking themes, this anthology invites readers to explore the depths of imagination and discover the universal threads that connect us all. From heartwarming moments to spine, we hope you enjoyed these captivating video stories. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content like this. Thanks for watching, and keep spreading the video story.